You had to do a year working so that you were familiar with the idea of working.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my dad, I said, oh, I don't fancy going in an office, not really. Because, you know, I loved sport and doing things. And so he said, well, why don't you go and be an assistant teacher? So I thought, oh, yeah, that might be okay. So those days, you didn't apply for jobs, you were appointed. And I was appointed to Tinsley School, and secondary school it was, Tinsley Secondary School. And I went there, and the woman who did most of the PE, she was really nice, I got on really well, I loved it, and did really well. And then at the Christmas, I'd gone in the September, then at Christmas, I got a letter saying, we're moving you. Because they, you know, you were appointed and then they could, we're moving you to Burton Street. So I thought, well, off I went. And it was a very, very small school. There were only about, I think, 2 classes in each year, and about 8-10 teachers. And I went in and they said, oh, pleased to meet you. Take you and show you where your classroom is and introduce you to your class.
And you were straight in?
So I was straight in charge of a class. What would now be a year 7-8 class. I couldn't believe it. I just was landed in front of them with a set of things that I had to do with them. But I loved it. The staff were lovely. And you know what the difference is? Small schools.
What difference today?
To what's happening today.
Okay.
They'd solve 3/4 of their problems in schools if they were smaller. I'm convinced of it.
Right.
If there were smaller schools, a lot of stuff would be avoided.
But don't you think that today everything's about more? Everything's about more kids, more people, more followers, more crowds.
Usually it's just about more money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And it's I'm not a believer in, I think, shelter, health and education should all be free and equal opportunity for everyone. Don't think there should be privilege in any of those areas. I'm not saying that people who work hard don't deserve to get on. That's not what I mean at all. It was in the news saying schools all refused pupils or expelled pupils to improve their figures.
Really?
Yeah, that's very recent. Schools expelled pupils so that their figures
Looked better.
look better.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing, because I honestly, I worked in an inner city school.
In Sheffield?
In Sheffield, because then after my year where I was an assistant teacher, I decided I liked it so much. I applied to train as a teacher, so I became a teacher. And then I was appointed to a school in Sheffield.
And you were a PE teacher, weren't you?
Yes, and English.
PE and English?
Yes.
Right.
And I loved it. I went into teaching and I loved it. Really, really did.
And when you say you loved it, what did it bring out of you?
I loved all the, really, I mean, it was an inner city school and there were some what you might call rogues, but very few really, really unpleasant kids.
Yeah.
And most of them would respond, and it's...
What do they respond to?
They respond...
People say today kids don't respond.
It's rubbish.
Yeah.
They respond to enthusiasm.
Yes.
they respond to enthusiasm. You know, the building that's our home now, this sports centre, the PE staff are actually based in it, because obviously they use it. And one of the PE staff is the next basketball player. And I stopped her a few years ago, she's left now, and I said to her, I said, do you know, it's such a shame. Here we are, here's this facility. We could take lots of girls from here. We never get any. And she said...
From that school?
Yes. And she said, well, they're not interested. They don't want to do anything.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm sorry, Leandra, but then all I can say is you're not interested. Because if you show enthusiasm, kids will respond.
But she was an ex-player.
Yes, she'd played.
So somebody showed enthusiasm
For her.
For her.
Yeah.
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 And this is I talk to coaches about this all the time. I talk to parents about this all the time. The kids are okay. The kids are okay. It's the parents, it's the coaches,
it's the system.
It's the adults that they're around.
Yes, it is.
And that's a great example of because she wouldn't have been a player in whatever sport had somebody not been enthusiastic.
Exactly. And I was quite cross with her because I knew she'd played. She played with us for a year or two. And the thing was, we managed to set up an academy for a couple of years there. And
at the school?
At the school.
Right.
Vanessa was coaching it. And Garnet's son, my eldest grandson, he was the right age, and he was at another school in Sheffield, but for the sixth form transferred to the basketball academy.
So it was boys' academy?
No, it was mixed, but there were more boys than girls.
Right.
But he started taking a year 7 group of boys, and they won the Sheffield Schools League.
Right.
At the end of his 2 years in the academy, when he left that school, guess what happened to that team? Disappeared. And I actually, I don't have as much contact with boys' parents. See, there weren't enough girls to play in the league, and there wasn't a schools league anyway for girls. But...
Is there now?
No.
No, okay.
No. But Vanessa started a year 7 girls club, and we've got girls in our club now who have come through the school. So it's just your interest and enthusiasm. But I met some of the boys' parents because Tyler also coached for the, well, at that time it was called the Saints. And I used to say to the parents, you know what, go and pester that school and tell them, do you realise you've got a team that's won the Sheffield Schools, you've got 2 boys on that team who are on the under 14 England development squad, and they're not doing anything. Surely, out of your 5 male teachers, there's 1
that could take them.
That could take it on.
Yep. So enthusiasm has been.
Oh, it's the key.
It's the key.
It is.
Yeah. And that's been, if I think back, because we were trying to work out, weren't we, when was the last time we saw each other?
Yeah.
And I was saying to Luke that I used to see you a lot at finals, because I played for teams that were usually in a final.
Yes.
At Sheffield Arena or...
Yes, at wherever, yes.
At wherever. And you were coaching a team that was...
Usually in the finals.
Usually in the finals,
time,
yeah,
yes.
At that time. And when I think of your club, I mean, it is the most successful women's club, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I think it's
When did you start it?
in any sport we've got to be the most successful.
Really?
Well, I've looked a lot and very few. I mean, we've got now altogether about 60 national titles to our name.
60.
Yeah. And
That's
I don't
amazing.
even think there's a men's club that's got that.
That's amazing. You've been going a long time, haven't you?
A long time, yes.
1961.
1961.
61.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but the success has come from, as a lot of people have asked me about that, and I've said, well, I don't believe in superstars. I never have. And we're a team. So I'm not interested who scored the most points. We play as a team. And also, we have a very special relationship. It's like a family relationship. And
With the group.
with the team.
Right.
And it always paid off. I mean,
Did people ever challenge that relationship
you mean people from within?
within?
No, not really, because it's funny really, but we established the way we do things.
Your culture,
Yes,
the environment.
we established that. So it's amazing how when people, even senior players, come into that environment, they look at first a little bit like, oh, you're not supposed to do this, and you've got to play every game, and you've got to, but then it's they just take it on board because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I was saying only last week to, it might have even been Sinbad, financially it's totally different now for us, but we used to play all over the world. We played in Russia, Holland, France, you name it, all over, and it was always the players paid for it themselves.
Really?
Yes. And if anybody couldn't afford it, the others that could put together to make sure they went.
Wow.
And we had some fantastic trips abroad.
Were you ever linked with the men's team at any point?
The Sharks?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I always say I'm probably more responsible for the men's team starting than anybody.
Right.
Because, do you remember Tony Shepherd at all?
Mm-hmm.
You remember Tony Shepherd?
Yeah.
Well, he was basketball development officer in Sheffield. And we had a number of under 18 boys used to come through. No senior men's team for them to play in.
Right.
So when Tony became basketball development officer, I said to him, Tony, don't you think that one of the things you ought to do would be to start a senior men's team so that there is a pathway for the boys? Because our best boys were going down to Derby and all over the place to play. So he did, and he called a meeting, called it at a pub in town, and quite a lot of people turned up, said
Right.
what it was for. Loads of people turned up, and as it happened, because normally the one thing that stops anything happening is who's going to do it.
Yeah.
So
It's usually the case. Everyone wants
It
to talk
is.
about it.
Oh yeah, and who's going to do it?
Yeah.
But Yuri Matishin,
Remember Yuri?
he said he would be the secretary.
Right.
So the team was founded called the Forgers. Called it the Forgers because of Sheffield.
Yeah.
And that's when Garnett came up to play
Yep, I remember.
for the Forgers.
I think I was at Doncaster at the time.
Were you?
Yeah, yeah, at the Panthers.
And the Forgers won, they had to go in Division 3, I think it was first. They won that, went into Division 2, won that, and then they got into Division 1, and because other teams had foreign players, we thought we ought to try and get a foreign player for the men. And shall I tell you who it was, and you'll know this name?
Go on.
Chris Finch.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And Chris Finch came over, and a female player came over, and I did it through a friend of mine. I've had a very, very good friend in America for over 30 years. He was on the NCAA executive. When I first met him, he was coach at Harvard,
Right.
but he moved on to become eventually director of athletics at Carnegie Mellon, which is a massive university in the north. Retired and went back as a consultant to Harvard, because he was always an academic and a workaholic.
Right.
But absolutely lovely, lovely man. He came and stayed with me and my husband quite a few times, and we got on very well. So I always used him he was a very good sounding board, and never about what he could get out of it. So it was through a friend of his that Chris Finch came.
That's amazing. And you know what's interesting, because I was thinking of asking you, who has had an influence on your career and your life and your thinking, because you are the most influential person in female basketball, and to be having an impact on men's basketball in Sheffield, which, if we go further afield, it's been men's basketball in the country as well, because the Sharks had a huge impact on basketball, didn't they, in the certainly in the 90s and early 2000s. So who influenced Betty Codona?
I think
young Betty Codona.
When I played, because I came across basketball when I was studying to be a teacher. That's the first time I met basketball. I was in the college netball team, and we all went and watched, and the men were playing basketball, so we decided to go in and have a run about, and I really liked it. And then when I started teaching, I did the normal netball, hockey, gym and dance. That was it, it was. And after a couple of years, and I'd got the girls interested and going well, and I thought, well, I'll introduce a few more things. So I did basketball, I did some badminton, and we had a park across the road from where I taught. I used to take the girls across and did tennis, because I've always loved tennis. And I just did all that. And I don't, when I was teaching, I didn't mess about. I used to say, look, if you netball, you play basketball, and if you basketball, you play netball, and I don't want any more. So they all did it. There was no problem. And from those days, I'm telling you now, I still see and hear from those girls in the very early days. Well, they're in the 60s now.
Right.
60.
Wow.
And in fact, one owns a very budding wedding cake business, and she's offered us one as a raffle prize when we get started, because I didn't realise nowadays, how much a wedding cake costs.
You getting married?
No, I'm not. And I certainly wouldn't be having a cake that cost £500 if I did.
Right.
So.
I wonder. That's my birthday cake doesn't cost that much.
So those girls all said, when they came to the time when they were leaving, came to me and said, "Oh, miss, can you start a basketball club?"
Right.
So I said, yeah, of course I can if you want one, certainly. So I started it, and it was at the school that we were at, because those were the days of night school. You probably can't remember that. Night school days. That's what they called it. I don't know what they call it nowadays, but so we started a club. That's why it's called Hatters, because the school was Hatfield.
Hatfield, right.
Hatfield House Lane School. And from there, and so I started playing as well, because I love, all sport I joined in. And a couple of my friends, teachers, joined in. And that's the Hatters were born. And then we had to look for a coach. So I'm going right back to your question now. And at that time, you perhaps won't remember this team, but there was a team in Sheffield that played in the top league for men called the Scorpions.
Way before my time now, Betsy.
I know it was. And they were a very, very good team.
Right.
Mike Codona was in that team, who held the record in the top men's division for a long time for shooting. And a young man called Bob Berry. And he volunteered to coach us.
Right.
He was about 5'9".
Right.
But honestly, the fiercest person on a basketball court I've ever seen.
As a coach?
As a coach.
Right.
He stood no messing.
Is that where you got yours from?
And
then?
I have to say he was a big influence on me because I liked it. Because if I'm doing it, I want to do it. So when he said, you must come and train, and we got a team and we went and trained. And after training, we're all going to the pub to socialise. And that's a good part, isn't it? That's how you build your relationship, so getting together. So we all did that.
Yeah.
And he had all sorts of rules, like if you're in the the back half when somebody's shooting in your basket, you're benched and you'll do 10 laps at the next training session.
That's a great. Do you know what? I like that.
Yeah.
I'm taking that one for because I'm coaching my son's team.
Yes.
So.
Well, we certainly made sure we got over halfway and up on defence, I'm telling you. And if you were late to training, you got 10 sprints. But for me, if you're going to do it properly.
Yeah.
And be grateful you've got somebody who's doing it properly, because I've seen it done the other way.
Yeah. And
it's a waste of time.
I love that, Betty. I love that. And that's one thing where you can't be as successful as you've been. And we'll talk about, we'll talk about the girls you've brought through and your teams, and I'm interested in that mindset, and it's the little things like
yes,
getting back on it's not even getting back on defense. It's saying, here's the rule: if somebody's laying up and you're not across that line, then we want to know why.
Yeah, something wrong.
But that coach instilled something in you that you've taken years and years on and passed that on.
I do. I still sit there. I go and watch as many of our junior teams, because we've got 7 teams altogether in the club, as I can. And if that doesn't happen, I always mention it to the coaches and say, this should not be happening.
Yeah.
It's in the wrong half when somebody's shooting into their basket. Yeah. Sorry, it doesn't work like that.
2 girls who I remember, Vanessa and Lorraine.
Yes.
Who was the elder?
Lorraine's the eldest by 13 months.
Okay, right. So I'll never forget Lorraine and Vanessa, and they were probably 2 of the best female players in the country, weren't they?
Oh, they were good,
Yeah.
yes.
So how does,
Very different,
very
but-
different players,
but good, both good.
and so you were coaching your own daughters,
Yes.
and I'm, my son's 13 now, right? So I'm putting my learning hat on here, and how did you coach? What was your philosophy for coaching your own daughters? Because you've had them for years.
Well, my basic philosophy was that nobody could tell. If anybody walked into that gym who didn't know us, they wouldn't be able to tell there was a relationship between me and two of the players.
Mhm.
And in fact, Anne Skelly, I don't know if you ever
I
remember
remember
Skelly.
the name, yeah.
Yeah. She always said, I used to feel sorry for Lorraine and Vanessa.
Because you were probably
Tougher on them.
tougher on them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, because I think if you're expecting people, your players, to conduct themselves in a certain way, A, you've got to do it, and B, if there is a relationship involved, you've got to make sure whoever it is does it. And I think that's really important. You can't set standards and ignore them either for your own benefit or for somebody a relation's benefit.
Yeah.
Standards are standard. And if you demand, for instance, punctuality, and sometimes we can all be late.
Mhm.
If I'm ever late, the first thing I do is call people in and apologise.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I also, and I don't know what you think about this, but I think as a coach or as a teacher, you have to demonstrate what you're expecting. You have to show that that's your way.
Absolutely.
It's not do as
It's-
I say, it's do as I do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fairly cliched, but
Well,
it works.
it's very cliched, Betty, but, and the big but is, and I see this in other sports, as you know, I'm going to Sheffield Wednesday today, and I see it in football a lot. Coaches, and it's the same for parents, because I do a lot of workshops for parents as well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, do a lot of workshops for parents. Coaches are demanding from their players or their kids. Yeah, doesn't matter who they are.
Yes.
They're demanding from their, and they want them to be motivated, and they want them to go to a different level and raise the game and have these standards. And I ask them, and I say, are you doing that? You don't want them to be slouching, but when you're sat,
Yeah.
how are you sat? And recently, I was doing a workshop for a basketball group of coaches, and it's the first time I've ever done a workshop for basketball.
Crikey.
First time in all the years.
Where was it?
It was on a level 3 in Manchester.
All right.
Right? And this group of coaches, they wanted to know about players handling pressure. And I said to them, how many of you, when you have a practice, a method, a tool to quieten your mind, to be still, how many of you practice some form of meditation or an ability to stop? One of them out of the group. So I said, how can you be saying or shouting to the players, calm down,
Yes.
if you don't practice that yourself? And it's the difference between doing what I say, doing, and being. You're doing
It is,
you're doing something rather than it's who you are.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're saying with the coach who had an influence on you, and you always demanded because it's who you are. You wasn't just doing it because you thought, oh, I'm doing this to show the girls it was who you were, so they saw.
Well, yes, I think that's right, and I just think you've got to be genuine with people.
Mm.
You can't. I don't like and that's why I never liked to go on. I used to be sent or go on these courses from school to do with what do they call it? Personal social education, PSE,
Mm-hmm.
and I always felt it was manipulative. It wasn't just happening. It wasn't just there. It wasn't part of what you were. And I used to take part, but I thought, well, I don't really. That things like. And I can see the point of them. I mean, perhaps I'm totally wrong, but one sticks in my mind, like, if you were planning a village, this was on one of the courses we went on, a new town, where would you put the prison? Where would you put the school? Where would you... And you've got to be thinking, well, where do they want you to say you'd put the prison or the school? I don't think it brings out what I call natural reactions. Right. I think people are trying to respond in the way they think
they should do.
They should do.
Right.
And that's why I don't like them, really.
Yeah.
Because I feel...
They're saying what they think you want to say, rather than what I call having a very honest conversation and it coming from who you are.
Yes.
Rather than, well, I've got to try and a big challenge with, I think, whether it's performance in the workplace or schools, the kids have it all the time now. It's about, I'm doing something because I've got to impress and I've got to get it right and not get it wrong. And I think when you're becoming, whether it's better at basketball or better at sports or better in life, you can't not get things wrong. I mean, you tell me about, I know as successful as you've been, but I'm interested in what would be, say, one of your most challenging times as a coach or as a mum, because I'm interested in you as a mum as well. You know, with two. Have you got any other daughters?
No, just
the two. Right.
Well, as a mum, I was always, my concern was, see, Lorraine was first, and Lorraine played. She had a lot of flair. Vanessa came second. She was a really hard worker and had such a brain for the game. Really has got a great brain for the game. In fact, you remember Laszlo Nemeth?
Mm-hmm.
He said that the two smartest players he'd ever coached were Steve Bucknell and Vanessa.
Right.
Says she always knows what to do, but I don't have a lot of confidence that people who are selecting teams always look for what I think or what will produce the best results. They often just look for the tall, athletic scorer, and that's fine. And
what should they be looking for? They
should be looking for that, but in my opinion, they should also be looking for faith in a player. Because if you ain't got...
Trained brain, you see.
If you ain't...
Trained brain.
Yeah, if you haven't got that ability to read and see, it doesn't matter how tall and athletic and whatever you are, you're easily beaten. I always remember I went to a clinic with the coach that coached Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of people who listen to this won't even know who Charles Barkley is. So I'll tell. Charles Barkley was a Philadelphia 76er.
Yes.
And the Suns. He played at the Suns as well.
very famous at the time.
Very famous. So he was best pals with Michael Jordan. Came through in that era of Jordan, David Robinson. Just after he was the kid with Dr. J, came after him, didn't he? So he was a superstar, wasn't he?
He was a name.
Yeah.
He was a name.
6'4", 6'5".
And an explosive temper.
I thought you were going to say rebounder because he was a great rebounder, but he was.
He was a great rebounder, but an explosive temper.
Yeah.
And I always remember at this seminar, one of the other people there asked the coach and said, "How do you coach Charles Barkley?"
Yeah.
Because he was such a character and such a big, massive character. And this NBA coach said, "Well, sometimes I tell him what to do. Sometimes I ask him what he wants to do."
Mm.
He said, "And sometimes I just get down on my knees and pray for him to do something."
Please, Charles.
Yeah. He said, "But I do remember that at the same time, and so people perhaps won't know this name, you can explain this one. Larry Bird
Larry Bird.
was big.
Huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Not athletic. He wouldn't have...
Slow.
Yes, not. But what a shooter.
Yeah.
And this coach
Didn't have the best form or technique.
No. And this coach told the story that Larry Bird, because I think someone else said, "Well, how does people like Larry Bird, because, he was known for being slow and what have you, deal with a player like Charles Barkley?"
Mm-hmm.
This coach said, "Well, what he does is he makes a fake, and when Charles is up in the rafters, he just steps to the side and shoots and scores."
And do you know how often I'm saying to the kids today, that it's not just about you being quick and athletic. You've got to have this. And I was fortunate, Betty, because I had the people that influenced me was Alton Bird.
Oh yes, well, fantastic.
And you'll remember Alton.
Oh yes, he's contacted me on LinkedIn.
Has he? Yes. Very good. Well, and so we should. So Alton and Cleve Lewis. Remember Cleve from Oldham? He played at Oldham first of all, and
vaguely remember
6'6",
him.
very long and lanky, and he played at Worthing a bit. So those two, but they always emphasised play the game here.
Yes.
And I was 14 at the time.
Oh, you can't beat it.
And it was stamped. It was stamped on my forehead. You play the game here. Everybody else is playing the game, they're running around. And that's had a huge influence on what I do today. Mm. I'm blessed that was kind of my introduction to thinking differently.
Yes. Yeah. Do I remember you? There was a clinic on in Leeds, and there was a strength and conditioning fitness coach over who delivered one of the clinics I think it was called Dean Brittenham, and he worked with NBA players and football players and everything, and he called your body your bodysuit.
Right.
And he maintained that was it plyometrics that was big at the time?
Mm-hmm. Plyometrics big at the time, and yeah.
And he was claiming that if used correctly and people worked at it enough, everybody could dunk. And I'm sure I remember you demonstrating on a course with the little barriers and things that they had for plyometrics. to demonstrate his part of what he was saying. Am I right?
You are right, and you know I've never remembered that until you've just said it, and so you're polishing my memories now. And I remember it was a coach's clinic, and
Yes.
and I think I'm trying to think we were probably an England
I think
group,
it was. Yes.
an England group.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah, and I remember because they had the NBA strength and conditioning coach, and there was another coach, wasn't there?
Yes.
Another NBA coach.
And I think it was Hubie Brown.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but
I think it was Hubie Brown.
Yeah.
And I think also on that same clinic was Calvin Murphy,
Right.
who at that time held the record for the most consecutive free throws.
Yes, and he played for the Rockets, didn't he?
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely
Yes.
remember it. Yeah.
And I also remember him saying, and it's funny when you watch games today because everybody does this, but he said when he was taking his free
Calvin
throws,
Murphy.
nobody had to disturb him. He got on that line and concentrated on the basket, and if he scored, he didn't want anybody coming.
Giving him 5.
No, they didn't come near him. He didn't want anything breaking
Yeah.
into that level of concentration
Yeah.
that he was applying
Yeah.
to his free throw shooting.
Yeah.
And yet it's commonplace now.
How?
All the time you see it.
Now I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the difference between today and for your teams and back then, the free throw percentages. But what I'm seeing are poor free throw shooters.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, I think
There's
you're
no,
right.
there's no emphasis. There's no. It's almost like there's no importance on it. It's okay. It's another shot, and
They're match winners.
I always got drilled into me. Alton Cleve was always second easiest shot in basketball.
Yes.
Great players are great free throw shooters.
Yes.
We want the ball in your hands, so we know we're going to get 2 when you go to the line. And today, what is it, Betty?
I don't know. I don't know. To be honest, I do feel that kids today don't always get a good deal in terms of who's coaching them, how they're coaching them, or, how they're being developed.
Mm-hmm. Betty, if you heard me coach today, go left hand, left hand. And I think there are some reasons why they can't do it because, they're very dominant on the right side, not just from playing basketball, but just they don't use this side of the body. But the big but, and I love the fact that you brought that up because everybody I'm speaking to now, I'm saying it's not even the under 16s that I have right now. The most important coach anywhere is the coach
Of course it is.
who's starting them off.
And that's one reason why Lorraine's gone with the under 12s.
Yeah. Well, that's making me think that really I should be with, starting off the kids.
Yes. Or what we
Like
try
I used
to
to
do
do back in the day. Right?
in my club, what we try to do, I have coaches meetings, not regular because these are volunteers who put a lot of time in, but we do have them. They're great people, and I have certain things that I do say should underlie everything.
Mm-hmm. And what are those?
And that's using both hands.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody agrees, but it's the actual implementation. And with the best will in the world, sometimes when I watch some coaching sessions and I watch some games, but in the coaching sessions, I see girls who, going up the left side, go up on the right hand. And because the coach is actually teaching something else, they overlook it. Now, I don't agree with that. I think you never, there are a few basic principles that you must never, ever overlook in basketball. Must threaten the basket is one.
Mm-hmm.
And yet so many kids receive the ball and never look to the basket. They're just waiting to make that pass back, you know. And it's underlying a few basic principles. I call them golden rules. I've got them printed. We have a player's handbook, and and that's about training and games and how to conduct themselves and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I put these golden rules in, and they are things that I think are very important,
So
such as
facing the basket.
Yes, being able to use
both
both hands.
Yeah.
Never dribble if you can pass ahead. There's not many times I see.
You don't mess with Betty. Yeah. Hey, you don't mess with Betty. This is.
Not many times I say never. I might usually say rarely.
Rarely and never.
But never dribble if you can pass ahead. Drives me mad.
Believe me, the kids I coach will be listening to this. Hey, you got this?
I used to say sometimes, you know, when they're young and they start, they do make you laugh sometimes to yourself, because I used to say, well, you've just dribbled enough to get you to Manchester, but we're not any nearer the basket at that end, you know.
That's my new line, Betty. Hey.
I've always had a saying, you know, practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say to the kids, no, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have an extremely good volleyball coach up at the centre where we play. That's the other big sport.
Mm.
He's very good. And he says it in a different way, but it's the same thing. He says practice makes permanent. So if you're practicing something incorrectly,
it's going to stick.
you're developing a fault.
Yeah.
And so I always say perfect practice makes perfect. And then I say, and it only works obviously for the first couple of times, who's your best coach? Well, they look and they think, have I got to say better? Or if their coach might be, I know one said it was the boys group and Garnet was, Garnet, they have to, you know, and again it's, God, who do I say? And I go, no, so they go, so-and-so, no, so-and-so, no. So then they start to look puzzled, really puzzled. Don't know what to say, that's what's going in the mind.
Yeah.
And I say, shall I tell you who your best coach is?
You.
You.
And they can only be the best coach if they know what to practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, when they're young and you're doing all this fundamental stuff, this is what you... Because they want to play offences, don't they? Drive me mad.
Yeah. Today I don't even think they get past 8 seconds of an offence these days.
I was just going to say, I know sometimes we had a coach with a team who spent hours on offence, and I said to her, they only play about 5 seconds of it in a game. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we be better concentrating on these very important fundamentals?
Yeah.
And of course, hustling and hard work and so important. I don't think there's anything as satisfying for a coach as to have 5 players on court who are giving you 100% and each other 100%. And what that achieves and can achieve is amazing. And I think it's the most satisfying thing that a coach can feel. And they can feel that as a coach. I do believe they can feel it even if they've lost, because they've lost well, if you understand what I mean.
Absolutely understand what you mean.
I mean, I don't like losing, don't worry. But if I feel that it's that situation, I don't feel half as disappointed. I mean, I could literally...
If you won and they've not given their all, it's not...
still feel a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
I know we had a player from Australia a few years ago, about 3 years ago, and we played this really easy game, and she scored 30 points. And she came to me, and she didn't work hard. She was always the last up goal and everything. And she said to me, "You will make sure, won't you, that goes down on my resume, that I scored 30 points." And I thought, I'd sooner you score 15 against top of the league.
Yeah.
And I think, that's... Mind you, I don't feel that you should make too much fuss about who scores what.
Who scores the points. And I think that's if you're developing a team and a culture, and even developing players who can play the game. I think if you're only focused on who's scoring the points, you miss the little things, like who made the pass that made, not the assist, who made the pass that created the opportunity for the assist.
Yes.
I think that's the pass that goes unrecognised, and that young players, or even senior players to be honest, but young players don't recognise. Now a coach like yourself or myself will actually go, "That's a great pass." Because it led to us getting an opportunity.
And do you know what very often it is? It's that pass that instead of dribbling, they put down the court quickly.
Yeah.
And
then it leads
to an opening to score.
But until that player starts to understand the game, probably got the brain like Lorraine had, then it doesn't, they don't get satisfaction from that, because they want to score, and I think the other one is them learning how to play without the basketball, which also has that got you that one?
Yes. Why don't you go and sit on the bench, because all you're doing is standing, even though you're supposed to be on the court part of the team. I know, it does.
But that comes from where it's whose responsibility, whose fault that they're not getting that.
Oh, that's right. And to be honest, I don't think at the moment the standard of coaching is that good in England.
Why is that?
Well, what coaching initiatives have we had recently? I was very disappointed because when I was director of coaching, I established a weekend coaching conference every year. Mm-hmm. And I fetched in a well-respected coach, and also we had workshops talking about all sorts of different things. Mm-hmm. And it was a really good weekend, and it got coaches together, and it grew and it improved. And then when I left the director of coaching position, I can't even remember who moved into it after me, but that disappeared. That weekend coaching conference disappeared. I wanted to introduce revalidation, and I remember discussing it actually at one of the coaching conferences, and people said to me, "Oh well, you'll lose a lot of coaches if you want a revalidation process, and you can't expect people to," and this is a fair comment, "to travel long distances for their revalidation." I said, no, we've got to actually put more opportunities regionally based. Mm-hmm. But this is what we need. And we were on the verge of introducing it when I left, and that was not picked up. I started the Basketball Coaches Association, and I'll tell you that took some starting because it was finding somebody to do the work.
Is that still going?
No, that's done.
Right.
I mean,
So you've been very innovative, haven't you, in your time? And is that because we'll talk about your legacy, and you've obviously, the club is the beacon, and that's but starting associations and getting coaches together, is that because you see it needs that, the game needs
yes,
that?
and I care about it, that we are getting good coaches, and that the kids are getting good coaches, and that we have a philosophy. I mean,
You say we as in Hatters?
in the basketball family.
But so why is the game? And this is because I've been more involved with basketball in the past 12 months than I have in the past, God knows how many years.
Yeah.
So people always say to me, why is the game always fluctuated? If it's had this, it's always been like close to taking off, and the kids have always loved it.
Kids love it.
It's always never.
Yes, they do. Kids love basketball.
It's never changed. It's the one sport that, yes, you're battling with football and rugby and cricket, but kids always love the game. So why? You're best placed to answer this question.
I just don't think we've had the leadership to take it forward.
Right.
And I partly put the blame on Sport England, because they've got this new code of governance, and the idea of having people from the sport running the sport is not their idea. Their idea is, I mean, if you look at basketball now, the chair is not from basketball. The chair of the board is not from basketball. The chief executive is not from basketball. He's from cycling.
Okay.
The second in command in the office, what they call the delivery manager, I always keep expecting him to turn up at the door with the takeaway, but they have all these wonderful titles nowadays, don't they? In schools and companies and what have you. Everybody's a director. And he's from rugby.
So what are you saying?
What I'm saying is, I really don't believe that. See, what Sport England have said is, let's bring people with skills into the sport. Financial skills, marketing skills, legal skills. Yeah, we can't say that's not a good thing, but it is a good thing if they're the people who end up running the sport, because they don't understand it. And if you don't understand it, how can you know where to go? What's the next best thing to do? You've got to, I suppose, rely on people who will lead on that in your staff, but many of them, I mean, I don't think for a start these people tend to get paid enough, or sometimes have the right skills that they need.
So as a consequence, the game at some level suffers at the top, and it's almost like the middle bit suffers.
I always put the analogy that this is you can't totally disclaim this concept, but if you were going to America on a plane like Lorraine's gone today, who would you sooner have flying the plane? Somebody who's been flying planes for 20 years, or somebody who's been working in the offices of the airline and is good at finance, and even the engineers that have involved in the actual engine parts and what have you. No, not me. I want somebody who's been flying it for years if I'm going to get in that plane. And I think we've gone away from that and sort of look at a skills matrix, you know, of things which are useful to someone who knows what they're doing for the sport. I remember I went to meet with the last chief executive who had come from, and you know, it must be a shock to these people. He'd come from Formula One and golf background, and I said to him, "You do realise, don't you, that you're in another world?"
And did he get a shock?
He only stayed for a year.
Okay, yeah.
And I went to meet with him and about girls basketball, because it's in such a, I could see it, you know, it wasn't going anywhere. And he got someone from the office with him, and I said, if we look at under 14 girls basketball, and he looked at, she was called Nikki, looked at Nikki and he went, under 14 girls basketball, have we got a national league for, you know, didn't that...
I had no idea.
So how could he, in all, you know, honesty, even pretend to know what I was talking about?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in basketball feel like this. But I do blame Sport England to a certain extent.
But then Betty, this is then it's who in basketball then is going to take those positions. Who in basketball? You mentioned the key word there. You mentioned leadership. Yeah. And you're a leader. Many people have not been in leadership positions or given opportunities to be leaders or developed qualities of being leaders. Somebody like your girls, leaders.
I don't know, I've thought about this a lot, because maybe if you do decide you've got to put in as a chief executive someone who actually is from another sport, then you've definitely got to have on the next level people
from basketball.
From basketball. You've definitely got to. Personally, I prefer the chief executive to be from basketball with a level of financial, commercial and whatever, strategic, whatever you like to call it, skills that the chief executive, but it needs someone with a vision, doesn't it? It's not about reacting.
We could, that's a whole, see that word there, yeah? Somebody with a vision, yeah? And that it's, I often talk about in my world is anticipate, don't react.
Oh.
Don't anticipate. We know.
True. We're
going up the mountain called life or sports or basketball or a season. We're going up the mountain. We know there's going to be a ravine. We're not going to be surprised when we get there and we go, oh, there's a ravine there. We're not going to be surprised when it snows, because we're already prepared for it snowing. We're not going to get up the mountain and go, we need a big jacket.
No.
And
you know, that's a really good analogy. That I'll remember that one.
So, but that's the vision to know, well, it's happened before, so we know, and it's learning also, Betty. What surprises me, and I've got my basketball passionate head on now, but why are we not learning? Why is the game not learning from places that have done it really well? Not necessarily NBAs of the world. I'm talking about Spanish leagues. I'm talking about French leagues. I'm talking about, what's going on in those places.
I honestly think we're in a culture of what's in it for me.
Okay.
I'm sad about that, and I don't think it's every single person, but I think too often people are wondering what they can get out of it. For instance, the governance code says that on the board of every sport, and so, but I'm talking about basketball, we have to have 3 independent directors, and they fill some part of the skills matrix. Now, I ask myself this question: why would someone want to be an independent director in a sport that they actually don't know anything about and that they're not from? Why would they want to do that?
It's a good question.
And I'd like to believe it's for the right reasons, but I'm tempted also to feel that it's for things like CVs and rewards in other ways, you know, going for, as someone said, gongs and things.
You've got a big gong, haven't you?
I have got a gong, yes.
You've got a big gong, and so Betty's gong is.
I got the shock of my life when I got the letter.
Was
I'll
it
tell
MBE
you.
or OBE?
OBE.
OBE. Congratulations.
And I got such a shock when
you?
I got it.
So
yes.
did you pick the letter up from the door, or or did somebody deliver it?
It came through the post.
Did it?
Yes. And it had Buckingham Palace on it.
Yeah.
And my husband was alive at the time.
Right.
And he got so excited, super excited.
It's good that we're here, because what is it that you see today as the challenge for young women?
Well,
because you talked about confidence on the phone.
I think confidence. I find that girls tend not to have the same sort of confidence in physical activity that boys have. Having said that, there are boys who do like confidence, and I don't know how best we can give them the confidence, which is why I was saying to Sinbad, I'd love it if you could come over and do us a, you know, if we can sort out and organise for you to come over and do something on that would be great. But I do sometimes think parents too often use it as the reason why the kids aren't doing well. And I don't know if
the confidence or the physical activity.
The confidence.
Right.
If parents will say, "Oh well, you know, she doesn't have any confidence," and I think if that's being said a lot,
it's being reinforced.
Yeah, it can't be a good thing.
It's being reinforced, and if mum or dad say, and one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about young people having mental skills before they get to 25, you know, is because if they're hearing those messages, you don't have much confidence, or she hasn't got much confidence.
I know.
If you hear that, then you start to believe it.
Exactly.
And the question then is, well, what is it? How do I get confidence? And I was only reading the other day that 1 in 4 girls specifically are doing things like self-harming.
Oh, I saw that, yes.
Yeah, doing things like self-harming.
Yes.
Now, that's at a certain level, but it's what's causing that is, it's not the lack of confidence, it's being able to deal with what's going on in their world. So relationship challenges, either in the home or with friends.
Yes.
There are the online challenges that they have now with the social media. There's the anxiety around exams, work, the future, So there are all these factors that chip away at something that an adult or a parent says she's not got confidence.
Yes.
And, that's where, my passion is with, the shirt I'm wearing today, which says Strut Camp, is,
I love it.
it's what we say is don't walk through life, strut. And it is having that confidence and giving them the tools. Like what you say, they've got to be able to face the basket.
Yes.
That's fundamental.
Of course it is.
But there are fundamental skills, fundamental mental skills that they've got to have, which are just like facing the basket. Otherwise, it leads to certain things.
Yes, and it's teaching those skills, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's key.
Yeah.
And
you know what the parents say, Betty? Then the parents say, well, nobody taught me that. So how can I pass that on?
I know.
And then we get the same challenge that we have with basketball is, well, who is teaching them how to face the basket or move without the ball?
Yes.
Who's teaching them the tools to be able to not avoid anxiety but deal with it?
Yes.
Who's teaching them to let go of something that's been holding them back from that as actually a belief or something that was nothing to do with them? So I had one of my footballers said to me, can you sit down with my sister? And I said, yeah, not a problem. And she's 28, and she said, when she was 12, I said to her, where did that come from? She said, I was 12 and my granddad said, you're not as good as your brother. And she'd held on to that for all those years, from 12 to 28, only because she didn't have the skills to be able to let go of it.
Yes. It's important, isn't it? I think my youngest grandson lacks confidence to a certain extent. I don't know whether I'd describe it as that, but he's very good. He's so skillful, and he's got a real brain. Real. Everybody,
Says that.
Picks him out. But I think he doesn't want. This is the group, and I don't think he wants to do that.
He doesn't want to stand out.
No. Now, so a lot of the time, but to be fair, he's also playing good basketball because he does pass it and move it around. I mean, he used to say when he was a bit younger and he wasn't quite to where he is now, he would say, pass the ball, Nan, but I never get it back. And I used to say, don't worry about that. You're doing the right thing, so don't worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Just you keep doing the right thing.
And
I always, as well, I don't know if you come across this at all. You probably don't, because the kids you are going to talk to in a lot of these football clubs are ones who've made it so far. But, that the team that Tyler coaches, they're just moving up into under 18 now. And there are 2 boys in that team. Quinn plays up, but he's young playing up. But there's 2 boys of that correct age group in that team who, if you could find the key to just turn it, would be awesome players. And I mean awesome. And it's just finding that key, isn't it?
But Betty, that's why it's like physically they've got skills, technically they've got skills, but it's that other bit, it's mentally. And my other passion is giving the coaches the tools to pass on.
Yes.
You're an exception. Yeah. Other good coaches, American coaches, the top football coaches at the minute, exceptions. But what they really understand is people. X's and O's, that's a given. You've got to know that. But where people excel is being able to to unlock what you've just said. I call it potential unlocked. It's being able to unlock that, not just technically and physically, but can you unlock that mentally? I was fortunate. I had arguably the best American, one of the best Americans ever come to this country.
Yes.
Yeah, Alton. I was fortunate, and I always say this to the kids, not to the kids, to young players, to older players. Last night I had dinner with one of my young players from Manchester United. He's 18 years old, and I said it's about having access to people. I said you're in the environment, you know, your kids will be in the right environment. But how many of the girls come to you and sit down and go, Betty, what about this? What about that? How many of them are asking that many questions?
Well, it varies. It does vary. And to a certain extent, I've deliberately, because now I'm not coaching as such, I'm running the club, I've sort of put myself in a slightly different position and situation where I want them, that you see, I think it's as the teacher and the coach that you can best mould them. Perhaps that's not a good word.
Guide them.
Guide them to where you want them to be. And it's difficult if you don't have regular interaction. But so I'm at the moment a bit above
Removed.
all that in a way, in terms of they will come to me, but it might be about different things to that.
So even if you rewind then several, but how many? I bet it was only a handful, and the ones who came to you regularly. What about this? What about that? Can you show me this? Maybe something about off the court or outside of the sport. The ones who really wanted to learn and be coachable were the ones who progressed quicker.
Absolutely.
And I see it all the time.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I say this all the time. At 12 and 13, the actual talent is what you might call omnipotent. But at 14, 15 and 16, the talent tends to sort of be sidelined a bit by perseverance and determination and attitude. And I've seen it so many times. And this is where, what I was saying to you earlier, sometimes coaches don't look at that in a kid and see that they've got that. You know, they listen to what you say. They try to do what you say. Because, you know, in this day and age, that doesn't happen a lot. That's why I say kids find it hard. They don't get trained at school now to listen and do as they're told, do they?
It's a great point. It's a great point. And what they do get told is concentrate. And then I always ask them, because then they come to me and say, well, my teacher or my coach has said concentrate. And I said, did they give you any actual lessons or tools to concentrate? No. And I said, well, so then we're back to the teacher or the coach or the parent saying, well, why are you asking them to concentrate when you weren't taught how to concentrate?
Well, that's it.
And if it wasn't for you starting your club in 1961, there's a lot of girls, there's a lot of women, there's a lot of families, there's a lot of development of young people and people that have been touched by your vision. And that's why sometimes, Betty, and I think the lessons, you know, I've certainly learned so much from our conversation, but sometimes people are always looking outside of themselves for answers.
Yes.
And most of the answers are inside. It's not okay, yes, you have to learn from others, but I would say it starts with you. Nobody's coming over the hill to rescue you.
No.
Basketball England, the PGA, the NBA, it starts with individuals and their leadership.
It does. And that's, at the moment, in basketball, there's a number of us that are older, I would say, senior people who've been around a long time.
Wiser.
Remember John Collins,
Yes.
Joe Forber.
Joe, yeah. Joe was my coach.
Was he?
Yeah, Joe was my coach.
Well, he's coaching girls now.
I know.
And Steve Pearl, Len Bush, people around, been around a long time working with girls. And we've got to where we're really challenging BE at the moment.
Right.
And we're getting a lot of
pushback.
Yeah, they're not happy about it. But I had to laugh the other day because John Collins, and you've mentioned this word earlier on in the conversation, John Collins sent an email saying, the best work BE's doing at the moment, the best we can say is they are reactivists. Because we go and moan and say, look, you don't know, you're not doing anything about this. And then suddenly something comes out about that, you know. So he's saying they're reactivists. It's a bit like the song the Stranglers used to sing. Now, I don't know much about the Stranglers. And Joe Forber sent an email saying, who are the Stranglers? John said, well, it's an old punk rock band. And these were the words of the song. But I had to laugh to myself, Joe, because Joe just remains outside of everything. He is so focused on his basketball.
And on what he's doing at his club. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is, and this is why I think also basketball's not doing well, is because the leadership, they're mostly reactivists.
It needs the likes of you and Joe in those positions. However,
well, we're past that now, Jamie.
However, we will organise something for us getting together, and I'll come and do something for the girls. I'll give you an idea of the type of things that I do, and then
right.
So we'll find a way to make something.
Oh, please, work. Yes, definitely, please. Yeah. For the girls' sakes, really, because I just think they do need something. Because regardless, I mean, Sinbad's brilliant with his daughter, and he does, I think he guides her really well in everything about how she should do and not do and what have you, in terms of attending something and working at it and that. But I think sometimes a parent can be too close, and sometimes it can have the opposite effect on.
Well, again, if we can talk about that. I also do workshops for parents as well.
Well, that would be good as well.
Because I always say, no point in speaking to the kids. And I work at Wimbledon, the tennis club, and every year we do a winning parent seminar. Because Dan, the head coach there, says, happy kids need happy parents, and you can't have a happy program unless you've got happy parents.
I agree with you.